Everyone in my small, snowy town in Alaska envied me. They said my mother, who ran off to New York City years ago, was like my Cinderella fairy godmother. Every month, she would mail me these package boxes filled with trendy gifts. Cute floral dresses, brand new backpacks, smartwatches. My grandma Eleanor would always hug me and say, "You have to study hard, Chloe. Show her your gratitude when you grow up. She's working 3 jobs, surviving on pennies in that giant city, just to send you these. It's hard on her." So I studied until my eyes bled. Finally, I got a full-ride academic scholarship to Columbia University. I wanted to tell my mother the amazing news in person. I saved every single penny of my local scholarship money and bought a one-way ticket to New York. On the flight, I pictured our reunion 1,000 times. I would hug her tight, tell her I was all grown up, and promise her she didn't have to work so hard anymore. It was my turn to take care of her. The moment the plane touched down at JFK, I immediately called her. There was a long, suffocating silence on the other end of the line before she finally spoke, her voice cold and distant. "You shouldn't have come, Chloe. I've remarried. My husband is a portfolio manager on Wall Street. Our daughter, Sophia, is about to attend Stanford. She's brilliant, beautiful, and the light of our lives. They don't know I have another daughter." I stood in the chaotic arrivals terminal, watching the crowd surge past me. People were hugging, kissing, crying, and throwing themselves into their mother's arms. But my mother's words just kept looping in my head like a broken record. "You shouldn't have come. They don't know I have another daughter." It turned out I was nothing but a dirty stain on her perfect new life. Something to be hidden away. This was my first time ever boarding a plane. When the flight took off from Anchorage, my heart had been beating so fast with excitement. When I was only 2 years old, my mother fled our home to escape my abusive father. She dumped me at Grandma Eleanor's cabin and boarded a one-way flight to New York. I hadn't seen her face since. Once, I messaged her, "Mom, can you send me a picture of you? Just one?" Maybe she didn't see it, or maybe she was too busy. She sent plenty of expensive gadgets that the kids in my town had never seen, but never a single photograph of herself. I did the math. 16 years. I hadn't seen my mother in 16 long years. I had fantasized about what she looked like now. Had she lost weight? Was her hair blonde or brunette? Were her hands calloused from years of hard work? I thought she would be waiting at the gate, holding a cardboard sign with my name on it. I thought she would wrap me in a hug that would make up for lost time. During the 8-hour flight, I hadn't slept for a single second. The middle-aged woman sitting next to me had smiled and asked, "Heading to the big city all by yourself, sweetie?" I had smiled, so wide my eyes crinkled. "My mom is waiting for me. How lovely," she said, patting my hand. A mother-daughter reunion is the best thing in the world. I had squeezed the container of cinnamon rolls in my lap. My mom had mentioned in a phone call years ago how much she missed the taste of Grandma's homemade cinnamon rolls. The sweet scent of cinnamon was still drifting up from the box, but suddenly, I felt completely lost. Yeah, I had been so excited. How did it turn out like this? I sent her my live location on Snapchat. "Mom, can we just meet for 5 minutes? I won't ruin anything for you, I promise. Please." No reply. I waited in the terminal for 1 hour. Then 2. Every time a woman with styled hair walked past, I gasped and looked up. None of them were her. My phone battery was down to 5%. I clutched it like a lifeline. Finally, a text popped up on Snapchat. "Chloe, please just go back home. Be a good girl, okay? Today is Sophia's birthday. We are hosting a huge family party for her. It's just not convenient for you to be here. Maybe next time, okay?" Next time? For 16 years, my mother had promised me countless next times. Next time she would visit. Next time we would hang out. Next time she would buy me something nice. And for the promise of this next time, I had flown thousands of miles, only to find out it was all a joke. I didn't leave immediately. I searched for the earliest flight back to Alaska, desperate to escape the city that had thoroughly humiliated me. But there were no flights available until the next day. I had to stay here. I found a quiet corner near the baggage claim, pulled my knees to my chest, and curled into a ball. When I was a kid and the other neighborhood kids bullied me, calling me an abandoned orphan, I used to curl up in a corner just like this. I pretended that if I made myself small enough, I couldn't hear their insults or feel their fists. An hour later, a family walked out of the VIP exit. I glanced at them casually, looked away, and then froze. My gaze snapped back. The woman was wearing a designer cashmere coat, carrying a Birkin bag I only recognized from magazines, and her hair was styled in perfect, glossy waves. She looked like a high society elite. Walking next to her was a teenage girl who was clinging to her arm, whining playfully. Mom, I'm starving. The woman smiled warmly, smoothing the girl's hair. I booked a table at that Michelin-starred French restaurant you've been dying to try since last year. Happy birthday, sweetie. They walked right past me. No one noticed the pathetic girl curled up in the corner. But I recognized her. Her smile was exactly how Grandma Eleanor had described it. Her eyes turned into perfect crescents when she laughed, and she had a tiny mole right at the corner of her lip. I scrambled to my feet, my heart hammering, and followed them from a distance. I watched as my mother guided Sophia toward a sleek, black Porsche Cayenne. The trunk popped open, and it was filled with birthday surprises. Balloons, designer shopping bags, and a massive, beautifully decorated cake box. Sophia squealed with joy, jumping into my mother's arms and kissing her cheek. I looked down at the container of cinnamon rolls in my hands. Slowly, I opened the lid, pulled one out, and stuffed it into my mouth. It tasted like ash. She was eating at Michelin-starred restaurants now. She wouldn't even look at Grandma's stale cinnamon rolls. Just like she wouldn't look at me. I threw the rest of the box into the trash can. My phone buzzed. Samantha Miller has sent you $50,000 via Venmo. Samantha. Chloe, I'm so sorry. This money should cover your college tuition and expenses. Please don't come back here. I stared at the screen for a long time. My mind automatically started calculating. After getting my acceptance letter to Columbia with a full ride, the school had also granted me a generous stipend. I had saved enough to cover my living expenses and even send some back to Grandma. But that wasn't all. Ever since my freshman year of high school, I had worked multiple part-time jobs, tutoring rich kids in town. I saved every penny. I had even bought a beautiful sterling silver bracelet as a gift for my mom. I had come all this way, with a heart full of hope, only to be paid off with $50,000 to get lost. A bitter taste filled my mouth. I finally understood why she hadn't come back for 16 years. But I still couldn't accept it. I sat on the cold airport bench all night. A janitor holding a mop asked me in English why I wasn't going home. I struggled to find the words, my throat tight. I'm waiting for someone, I whispered. I was waiting for someone who was never going to show up. When the sun rose, I boarded my flight back. Before stepping onto the plane, I took one last look at the gray New York skyline. I made a silent vow to myself. I would do exactly what she wanted. I would never look for her again. But I would make sure she remembered exactly what kind of daughter she had thrown away. One day, I would stand at a height she could never dream of reaching. After returning to my dorm, I called Grandma Eleanor. When she picked up, I could hear another line ringing in the background. It was the landline back at the cabin, the one that usually only rang on holidays. The old landline had a terrible speaker, and the audio leaked loudly. Eleanor, how many times do I have to tell you? Keep Chloe away from me. I worked so hard to get rid of that baggage. What are you trying to do? Ruin my life. I told you to put her up for adoption back then, but you wouldn't listen. Now she's tracking me down like a psycho. Grandma Eleanor must have realized I could hear. She whispered hurriedly into the receiver, Samantha, stop it. Don't say that. I don't care. If you want to keep that anchor dragging you down, fine. But keep her on a leash. If she ruins the life I built here, I swear I'll drag us both down. Grandma slammed the phone down. Chloe, sweetie, your mom didn't mean that, Grandma said, her voice shaking on our FaceTime call. I forced a tight smile. It's okay, Grandma. I'm sorry I couldn't bring you anything from New York. Grandma opened her mouth to speak, but shut it. Instead, she pointed her camera at a freshly baked apple pie on her counter. Eat well at school, okay? Focus on your classes. I will. After hanging up, I went to the closet and pulled out the box containing every single gift my mother had sent me over the years. I examined them one by one. Now I realized these weren't gifts bought with hard-earned savings like Grandma had thought. The iPad I had cherished? It had a tiny, laser-engraved name on the back that had been partially buffed out. Sophia. The beautiful floral dress I was always too afraid to wear because I didn't want to ruin it. The tag inside was a size 4. I was a size 0. Even the ice skates that all my classmates envied were 2 sizes too small. When I was younger, I was so vain. I would jam my feet into those skates, ignoring the pain just to show them off. Looking back, every single piece of maternal love I had received was just Sophia's trash. I was like a street beggar, collecting someone else's garbage and treating it like treasure. I dragged the box to the dumpster and threw everything inside. Then I looked up at the moon. Did she see the same moon in New York? From that day on, I stopped wishing on stars. I would be my own god. For the next 3 years, I didn't take a single day off. I drowned myself in my studies. I cleared all my credits a year early, graduated top of my class with a double major in finance and corporate law from Columbia, and landed an internship at a top-tier Wall Street investment bank during my junior year. My starting salary was $150,000 a year. By my second year post-grad, I poached a massive client and jumped to a prestigious private equity fund as a senior investment manager. A journalist from the Columbia Alumni Daily once interviewed me, asking what drove my insane work ethic. I pulled out a cheap stylus pen from my bag, the one piece of Sophia's junk I had secretly retrieved from the dumpster years ago. At first, I just wanted to own something that actually had my name engraved on it, I said. I wanted to prove that I deserved something brand new. The journalist didn't fully understand, but she wrote it down anyway. In my third year, my firm appointed me to lead our delegation at the Global Financial Summit. "Chloe," my managing director told me, patting my shoulder, "you are the youngest senior manager in our firm's history. The biggest players in the world will be listening to your keynote presentation. Make us proud." When I saw the summit venue, my hands started to shake. I had waited 5 years for this day. Actually, much longer than 5 years. I suddenly remembered my 5th grade parent-teacher conference. My desk was the only one in the classroom that sat empty. My classmates whispered and pointed at me all afternoon. I cried until my chest ached. When I got home, I begged Grandma to call my mom. I wanted to ask her when she was coming home and if she could make it for my 6th grade graduation. Grandma hesitated before dialing the international number. The phone rang for a long time, but before I could even say, "Hi, Mom," the line went dead. My mother's parting words from 5 years ago echoed in my mind again. "My husband is a portfolio manager on Wall Street. Our daughter, Sophia, is about to attend Stanford." I scanned the summit's VIP guest list, and sure enough, I saw Samantha Miller and Sophia Miller listed as guests of James Miller. James was attending as a mid-level representative. At 40-something, he was at the same corporate tier as me, except his portfolio performance wasn't nearly as impressive. For the past 5 years, I had slept less than 5 hours a night. I memorized every financial regulation, every market trend, and every client's personal preferences. My clients worshipped me. Many of them swore that wherever I went, their multi-million-dollar funds would follow. That was how a 23-year-old girl from Alaska was now standing in a room full of Wall Street titans. On the third night of the summit, a private gala was held at the Stanford Faculty Club. I wore a sleek, custom-tailored black silk evening gown with 3-inch Saint Laurent heels, walking into the grand hall alongside some of the biggest names in venture capital. The gown was bought with my first major performance bonus. It was hand-tailored and my initials, CV, were delicately embroidered with gold thread inside the collar. In the center of the ballroom, I spotted my mother. She looked a bit older than she had 5 years ago, but she was still draped in expensive jewelry, wearing a practiced, high-society smile. Sophia was by her side, laughing with a group of wealthy trust fund kids. Holding a glass of champagne, I glided through the crowd, walking right past them. Suddenly, my mother's eyes locked onto me. Her face turned instantly pale. "What are you doing here?" She grabbed my wrist, her grip tight and panicked, trying to drag me toward the exit. "I don't know how you managed to sneak in here, but you need to leave right now. Don't ruin my life." I didn't say a word. I just smiled. My years in corporate finance had taught me how to handle wild dogs and screaming clients alike. "Just smile. Chloe, speak to me," she hissed. Her aggressive movements began to draw attention. A few nearby guests looked over, whispering. Sophia immediately stepped up like a protective guard dog, glaring at me. My mother glanced at the gathering crowd, panicked. Then, she pointed at me and raised her voice. "This girl is a thief. She just stole my diamond necklace." I was just trying to convince her to hand it back quietly. A collective gasp went through the crowd. I could feel the disgusted, judgmental glares locking onto me. Someone quickly called for security. "Wait," seeing the security guards approach, my mother seemed to realize she had gone too far. "She's just a kid. As long as she gives the necklace back, we don't need to involve the police." But before she could finish, Sophia stepped forward, swung her arm, and delivered a harsh slap across my face. Smack. "You thief. Give my mom her necklace back." I touched my stinging cheek, stunned by how viciously arrogant my mother's golden child was. But strangely, the heavy weight that had suffocated my chest for years suddenly vanished. Is this it? Is this the perfect family she abandoned me for? I let out a cold laugh. Just then, the overhead speakers announced my name. "And now, please welcome our keynote speaker, Senior Portfolio Manager of Vanguard Holdings, Chloe Vance." I smoothed down my dress. But as I turned to walk toward the stage, Sophia grabbed my skirt. "You're not going anywhere until you give it back." "Let go of her." The security guards tried to intervene, but the crowd had surrounded us, murmuring in multiple languages. It was giving me a headache. A cold smirk played on my lips. Before I could say anything, the event director pushed through the crowd. "Miss Vance, you're on in 30 seconds. The stage is ready." Ignoring my frozen mother, I shook Sophia's hand off my dress and walked past them, stepping onto the stage under the glittering spotlight. I adjusted the microphone, looked down at the shocked woman in the crowd, and began to speak. "Good evening, everyone. Before we dive into the Q3 market projections, I'd like to share a quick story. It's a story about a girl who was abandoned by her mother and how she fought her way to this very stage." Below the stage, my mother's face drained of all color. The silence in the grand hall of the Stanford Faculty Club was absolute. Hundreds of the most ruthless, brilliant minds in global finance stared up at me, their champagne glasses momentarily forgotten. They were expecting a dry, numbers-heavy monologue on Q3 market projections. Instead, I had just sliced through the polite atmosphere with a scalpel. I leaned closer to the microphone, my voice steady, projecting effortlessly across the room. I didn't break eye contact with the woman shivering in her designer evening gown. In our industry, we talk constantly about risk management, about liquidating toxic liabilities, and about identifying severely undervalued assets. I began, my tone conversational but razor-sharp. 21 years ago, in a freezing, snowed-in cabin in Alaska, a woman decided that her 2-year-old daughter was a toxic liability, an anchor dragging down her ambitions. So, she cut her losses. She abandoned the toddler with an elderly grandmother, boarded a one-way flight to New York, and erased that asset from her ledger. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw several managing directors leaning in, suddenly captivated. 16 years later, I continued, pacing slowly across the stage, the spotlight tracking my black silk gown. That discarded asset flew across the country to see her, to share the news that she had earned a full-ride scholarship to an Ivy League university. Do you know what the mother did? I paused, letting the silence stretch until it was almost uncomfortable. She sent a Venmo payment of $50,000 with a message that essentially read, "Take this and never show your face to my new, perfect family again." I smiled, a cold, practiced Wall Street smile that didn't reach my eyes. It was, historically speaking, a terrible miscalculation of intrinsic value. Because the fundamental rule of any good portfolio manager is knowing the difference between garbage and a gold mine. I gripped the edges of the podium. Today, that liability graduated top of her class from Columbia. She manages over $2 billion in client funds. And she is standing in front of you tonight as the youngest senior portfolio manager in Vanguard Holdings history. The ballroom erupted. It started with my managing director, Richard, who stood up and began clapping. Within seconds, the entire room joined in a deafening standing ovation. Wall Street loves nothing more than a bloodthirsty underdog story, especially one wrapped in corporate triumph. I looked down. Samantha Miller looked as though she were going to faint. Sophia, standing beside her, had dropped her arrogant glare, her mouth hung open like a fish gasping for air. She finally realized who I was and, more importantly, what I was in this room. I raised a hand, gracefully quieting the applause. "Now, I promise I will get to the Q3 projections. But before I do, there is a minor administrative issue to handle." I looked directly at the event director standing in the wings, then shifted my gaze to the Stanford campus police who had just arrived at the ballroom doors, called in by the earlier commotion. A few moments ago, a guest in this room publicly accused me of stealing her diamond necklace, I said, my voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. Furthermore, her daughter physically assaulted me. I turned my face slightly, letting the stage lights catch the angry red mark still burning on my cheek. The atmosphere in the room snapped from awe to sheer, freezing outrage. As a representative of Vanguard Holdings, I take accusations of theft extremely seriously. I request that the authorities secure the exits and conduct a full, immediate search of my person, as well as the accuser. Let's clear this up on the record, shall we? Richard, my managing director, was already moving. He was a silver-haired shark who treated his senior managers like his own children. His face was thunderous. He intercepted the police officers and pointed directly at Samantha and Sophia. "Nobody leaves," Richard boomed, his voice carrying the weight of a man who managed sovereign wealth funds. "That woman accused my keynote speaker of grand larceny in front of 300 witnesses. I want this investigated right here, right now." Samantha took a stumbling step backward, shaking her head wildly. No, wait, it's a misunderstanding. I think I left it in the hotel room. I misspoke. You didn't misspeak, Mom, I said smoothly into the microphone. You explicitly called me a thief. And Sophia slapped me across the face while demanding I return it. James Miller finally pushed his way through the crowd. He was a handsome man in his late 40s, wearing a tailored Tom Ford suit, but right now, he looked entirely panicked. He worked for a mid-tier private equity firm. He was a guppy swimming in a room full of great white sharks. Samantha, what the hell is going on? James hissed, grabbing his wife's arm. He looked up at the stage, then back at his wife. Did you accuse Chloe Vance of theft? Are you out of your mind? James, please, let's just go, Samantha pleaded, tears finally spilling over her mascara. We need to leave. They're not going anywhere, a female police officer said, stepping between James and Samantha. Ma'am, open your clutch. We're going to resolve this right now. Sophia shrank behind her father, terrified. Daddy, make them stop. Open the bag, Samantha. James gritted out, his face flushing crimson as he realized the entire hierarchy of global finance was watching his family self-destruct. With trembling hands, Samantha unclasped her diamond-encrusted evening bag. The officer took it, peeked inside, and pulled out a glittering, heavy diamond necklace. It had been stuffed hastily beneath a compact mirror. A collective scoff echoed through the elite crowd. Disgust. Contempt. Well, the officer said, holding it up. Looks like it wasn't stolen after all. I stepped down from the stage, the crowd parting for me like the Red Sea. I walked slowly, my 3-inch heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, until I stood face to face with the family that had paid $50,000 to erase me. Officer, I said calmly, I am pressing charges for defamation against Samantha Miller. And I am pressing charges for assault and battery against Sophia Miller. I want them arrested. Sophia let out a piercing shriek. You can't do this. Do you know who my dad is? I'm starting at Stanford in the fall. Not with a violent misdemeanor on your record, you aren't. I replied coolly. I looked at James Miller. Mr. Miller, I am Chloe Vance. James swallowed hard, trying to salvage his professional dignity. Ms. Vance, please. My wife is clearly unwell. My daughter is just a teenager. This is a massive misunderstanding. If we could just speak privately. Privately? I tilted my head. The way your wife spoke to me privately 5 years ago, at JFK Airport, when she told me I was a dirty stain on her new life. James froze. He looked at me, really looked at me, and then his eyes darted to Samantha. The resemblance between us, stripped of the age difference, was undeniable. What is she talking about, Samantha? James's voice dropped to a horrifying whisper. Samantha sobbed into her hands, unable to meet his eyes. She didn't tell you? I feigned polite surprise. Samantha told me you didn't know she had another daughter. I suppose she also didn't mention she was a runaway from a trailer park in Alaska, not the Manhattan Trust Fund heiress she likely pretended to be when you met her. James staggered back as if I had shot him. His entire marriage, his social standing, his wife's pedigree, all of it shattered in real time. Richard stepped up beside me, flanked by 2 of Vanguard's terrifyingly silent corporate lawyers. James Miller, isn't it? Richard asked, his voice deadly quiet. You're with Apex Capital? Why, yes, sir. James stammered, sweating through his expensive shirt. Not anymore, you aren't, Richard stated flatly. I golf with your CEO, Marcus. In fact, Vanguard provides the liquidity for 2 of your flagship funds. First thing tomorrow morning, I am pulling our capital. I will make sure Marcus knows exactly why. Your family just publicly assaulted my best manager. You're radioactive, James. James looked like he was going to vomit. He turned to Samantha, his eyes filled with absolute loathing. You stupid, lying bitch, he hissed. He violently shoved her hands away when she tried to grab his arm. Don't touch me. I'm calling my lawyers. You're getting nothing. James turned and walked out of the ballroom, abandoning his wife and daughter to the police. Samantha collapsed onto her knees, sobbing hysterically. Sophia was crying too, screaming for her dad to come back as the officers smoothly clicked handcuffs onto her wrists. The pampered princess of Wall Street was being dragged out in front of the very society she thought she ruled. I stood there, feeling the cool silk of my gown against my skin. I looked down at Samantha. She looked up at me, her makeup running in thick black streaks down her cheeks. The high society elite facade was gone. She just looked old, tired, and pathetic. Chloe, she whispered, a desperate, begging plea. Please. I didn't blink. I simply stepped around her kneeling form, walked back up the stairs to the stage, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the waiting crowd. "Now," I said, a relaxed smile on my face. "Let's talk about the tech sector's volatility in Q3. The fallout was swift, brutal, and absolute. By the time I flew back to New York 3 days later, the financial world had already devoured the Millers. Wall Street is a small, gossipy village wearing $1,000 shoes. Word of what happened at the Stanford Gala spread faster than an insider trading tip. Apex Capital fired James Miller before the weekend was over. He was a decent portfolio manager, but nobody was willing to risk the wrath of Vanguard Holdings over a mid-level guy whose wife was a certified liability. Without his 7-figure salary and bonus structure, James's highly leveraged lifestyle instantly collapsed. He immediately filed for divorce, locking Samantha out of their Hampton house and freezing their joint accounts, citing fraud. He leaked to the press that she had lied about her identity and hidden a secret child, positioning himself as the victim. As for Sophia, her arrest for assault made the rounds on social media. The video of a Stanford incoming freshman being led out of the faculty club in handcuffs was too juicy for the internet to ignore. Stanford quietly rescinded her acceptance letter, citing a violation of their code of conduct. I watched it all happen from the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new corner office on the 50th floor of the Vanguard building in Manhattan. I felt no pity. I felt no joy either. I just felt clean, like a wound that had finally been disinfected and stitched shut. 6 months later, the holidays approached. New York was blanketed in a pristine layer of snow, the streets glowing with golden fairy lights. I didn't buy a one-way ticket this time. I chartered a private Gulfstream jet to Anchorage, Alaska. I hired a specialized medical transport helicopter to take me the rest of the way to the small, snowy town I had grown up in. When the helicopter landed in the clearing near Grandma Eleanor's cabin, the entire town came out to stare. The kids I used to tutor, the neighbors who used to call me an abandoned orphan, they all stood behind the snowbanks, wide-eyed, watching as a woman in a tailored camel hair coat and designer boots stepped out into the freezing wind. I walked up the creaky wooden steps of the cabin and pushed the door open. Grandma Eleanor was sitting in her rocking chair by the wood stove, knitting. The cabin smelled exactly as I remembered: pine needles, wood smoke, and cinnamon. She looked up, squinting through her thick glasses. Her hands stopped moving. "Chloe?" "Hi, Grandma," I said, my voice cracking for the first time in years. I dropped my leather weekender bag and ran to her, sinking to my knees and burying my face in her lap. She smelled like laundry soap and safety. Her frail, wrinkled hands stroked my hair, trembling. "Oh, my sweet girl," she whispered, crying softly. "My beautiful, brilliant girl. You came back." "I told you I would," I said, looking up at her with a watery smile. "I came to get you." "Get me?" She blinked, confused. "You're not spending another winter chopping wood and freezing in this cabin," I said fiercely. "I bought a house in upstate New York. It has a wraparound porch, a massive kitchen with double ovens so you can bake all the cinnamon rolls you want, and a fireplace that turns on with a remote control. We have a live-in nurse to help with your arthritis. You're coming home with me." Grandma Eleanor looked at me, overwhelmed, tears spilling down her weathered cheeks. "Chloe, I can't. I don't want to be a burden on you. You are my only family," I said firmly, squeezing her hands. "You are the one who stayed. Now, it's my turn to take care of you. We leave in an hour." Packing up her life took less time than I thought. She didn't have much. Just like me, she had spent her whole life making do with the bare minimum. As my security detail carefully loaded her few cherished boxes onto the helicopter, I walked over to the old rotary landline on the kitchen counter. The one Samantha used to call when she wanted to scream at us. I picked up the heavy receiver, listened to the dial tone for a second, and then ripped the cord out of the wall. Life moved on. The house in upstate New York was everything I promised her it would be. Grandma Eleanor thrived. The color returned to her cheeks, and her laughter filled the massive, sunlit rooms. Every weekend, I drove up from the city to spend time with her, eating warm cinnamon rolls and reading by the fire. I was 25 when I made junior partner at Vanguard. My life was a meticulously constructed fortress of wealth, respect, and security. It was a rainy Tuesday in November when my assistant, a sharp-ass tax girl named Clara, buzzed my intercom. "Ms. Vance? I'm sorry to interrupt. There's a woman in the lobby insisting on seeing you. Security asked her to leave, but she's making a scene. She says she's your mother." I stopped typing. I stared at the blinking red light on my phone console. "Send her up, Clara," I said quietly. "Have security escort her to conference room B. I'll be there in 5 minutes." Conference room B was known as the execution chamber among the staff. It was a massive, sterile room made entirely of glass and steel, suspended over the Manhattan skyline. When I walked in, Samantha was standing by the window, staring out at the rain. When she turned around, I almost didn't recognize her. The glossy, high society waves were gone, replaced by thinning, brittle hair tied in a messy bun. The designer cashmere had been swapped for a cheap, water-stained polyester trench coat. She looked gaunt, her cheekbones sharp and hollow. The divorce had clearly destroyed her. James's lawyers had eviscerated her in court, leaving her with practically nothing. "Chloe," she breathed, taking a step toward me, her eyes filled with desperate, manic hope. You agreed to see me." I didn't sit down. I stood at the head of the long mahogany table, clasping my hands lightly in front of me. "You have exactly 3 minutes, Samantha. Speak." She flinched at the use of her first name. "Chloe, please. I know I made mistakes. Horrible, unforgivable mistakes. But I'm your mother. I brought you into this world." "You did." I agreed neutrally. "And then you left me in it to rot." "I was young. I was scared of your father," she cried, stepping closer, her hands pleading. "I wanted a better life. And I wanted to give you a better life too. That's why I sent you all those gifts." "You sent me Sophia's garbage," I corrected her, my voice dropping to a terrifyingly quiet register. "You sent me the things your real daughter threw away, so you could buy off your own guilt. It wasn't love. It was a tax write-off for your conscience." Samantha choked on a sob. "I have nothing, Chloe. James took everything. Sophia won't even speak to me. She blames me for ruining her life. She moved to Europe with some guy she met in a club. I'm working at a diner in Queens. I can barely afford rent. Please. You have so much. Just help me." I stared at her. I looked for a shred of the heartbreak I had felt at JFK Airport all those years ago. I looked for the little girl who had cried in the corner of a baggage claim, wishing she could shrink away to nothing. But there was nothing there. Just cold, absolute apathy. I reached inside my tailored suit jacket, pulled out a sleek leather checkbook, and uncapped my fountain pen. I quickly wrote out a check, signed it with a flourish, and tore it from the book. I walked over and held it out to her. Samantha's eyes widened. She reached out with trembling fingers, taking the slip of paper as if it were a holy relic. She looked down at the numbers. $50,000. She looked up at me, confused. 50,000? It's the exact amount you Venmo'd me when I was 18, I said, looking her dead in the eye. When I flew thousands of miles to tell you I loved you, and you paid me to disappear because I was inconvenient. Samantha's lips parted, her face crumbling in horror as the realization hit her. "That is my final investment in you," I said, my voice like ice. "It buys you out of my life, permanently. If you ever contact me, my grandmother, or my firm again, my lawyers will drag you into court and bury you so deep in legal fees you won't see daylight for the rest of your miserable life." "Chloe, no," she whimpered, the check trembling in her hand. "You can't do this. I'm your family." "I don't have a mother," I said, turning my back on her and walking toward the glass door. "My mother died in an Alaskan snowstorm 23 years ago." Chloe, wait. Please," she screamed, rushing forward, but the 2 security guards stationed outside the door stepped in immediately, blocking her path. I walked down the quiet, carpeted hallway of Vanguard Holdings. I didn't look back. I could hear her sobbing echoing faintly behind the thick glass doors, but it faded away with every step I took. When I returned to my office, the city below was beginning to light up through the rain. Millions of tiny, glittering lights stretching out into the horizon. It was a giant, unforgiving city. A city that had once humiliated me, chewed me up, and spit me out. Now I owned a piece of it. I walked over my desk and picked up a small, silver picture frame. It didn't hold a photo of a mother I had never known. It held a Polaroid I had taken last week. Grandma Eleanor, wearing a flour-dusted apron, laughing as she pulled a massive tray of cinnamon rolls out of the oven. I smiled, a real, genuine smile that made my eyes crinkle. I sat down in my leather chair, opened my laptop, and got back to work.